Right, hello everybody, and thanks for organising, Steve. My name is Trizia Wells, and I am the funding officer for Bromley and Croydon. And it's interesting, just in this small group, to hear. So I'm familiar with some of the groups that you're representing, some of whom I know. I remember from when I joined the fund. I think some of your grants have just finished on one group, on JASB, I think. Some of whom I know have come in for funding and have been successful at the initial stage, some of whom haven't been successful, and some of whom I've never heard of before. So I've got covered in this small group, we've covered the whole range, which is great. So yeah, without further ado, I'll just launch into my presentation. This is, as I said to Steve, it's a presentation that covers the new strategy. New, it's not brand, it's new, but it's not completely different. That's the main thing. So if you've got previous experience of the fund, then there shouldn't be any sharp intakes of breath. Hopefully it should still all be familiar to you. So if I share my screen, I will then not be able to see you at all. So I think if we save questions to the end, if you wouldn't mind, as I won't be able to see you if you've got your hand up. Okay, here we go. Great. Okay. Okay. Right. So the new tagline, for want of a better word, that you oh, not that one, that's my notes, that you'll hear when talking about the new strategy is it starts with community. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about, how that, a little bit about how the new strategies come about, but also what we mean by that tagline, it starts with community. I'll tell you about our funding offer in England as it stands at the moment. So basically, during COVID, there was a period of relatively short term, although the short term turned out to be a bit longer than anticipated. But there was some short-term emergency funding and funds being distributed. So we're now kind of returning more to business as usual, if you like. We'll be covering who and what we can fund, and then how to apply. So I should say that my, how am I going to move this on? There we go. So I should say that my role is with the Reaching Communities Fund. There's a series of funding programs across the lottery, but I will be able to tell you about a little bit about other funding programs as well. So we've got, we're the largest single source of funding for community in the UK, and we have around £30 million a week to distribute to those good causes, and around 600 million a year across the UK. But the programmes that I'm going to talk to you about now are relate to England. And I'd just like to say at this point that our demand for funding is very high, and if any of you have sadly been unsuccessful in applying for a grant, then you'll know that the competition is very high, and we do have to say no to good proposals. It's never a reflection on the proposal itself. It is simply that the demand is high and the competition is very stiff. So lots of money out there, and here we go. Okay, so we're a non-departmental public body delivering public funds. So the National Lottery is at arm's length from the government, but we are accountable to Parliament and the public for our activities. And all our money comes from the National Lottery. So if you buy a ticket and you've got a grant, you've kind of funded yourself, if you like. So it starts with community is the name of our new strategy, which will take us up to 2030, and that really sets out our ambition, if you like, to deliver funding that strengthens society and improves lives across the UK. And I'll go into a little bit of detail about what we mean by society and what we mean about communities in this little talk. By 2030, we'll have given over £4 billion to activities that will help to create resilient communities. So we're looking for communities that are projects that help communities to become more inclusive. And there's also got a slight change of emphasis, or a more emphasis, if you like, on the environment and climate. So we're looking at environmentally sustainable activities and ideas. And this has all come about through conversations over the past year with individuals, with grant holders, with non-grant holders, with organisations. Over 18,000 people had some input, if you like, into the shaping of the new strategy. Still, so I have to keep doing this because I can't see the screen properly. Here we go. Okay. So we set out 4 community-led missions, and they're not, if you're familiar with the programme already, they're not massively different. It's more like a change of emphasis and a renewed focus, if you like. We've always supported these areas. So we've always supported projects that help communities to come together, that help communities to be environmentally sound, that support children and young people, and that support people to live healthier lives. So that's physically healthier, emotionally healthier, and mentally healthier. So we've always supported those areas, if you like. It's just about a renewed focus. And we're still aiming to support those communities to build from their strengths. So we're still looking at community-based funding. We're still looking at what matters most to each individual community. We're still keeping that local approach. So we're still hopefully approachable. And as your local officer, I'm there for you to have a chat with, both before you put a bid in, an application in, but certainly if you're successful throughout that process of holding the grant, I'm there to chat with you, to come out and visit you, and to help you through. Really, we're interested in smaller grassroots organisations, in helping those to become bigger and to support the communities in which they're based, because very often those are the organisations which come from real genuine need, and they know best what's going on in their local area. So what are we doing? We are, there we go. What we're going to do is we're going to double the size of the available grant and the time that a project can run in respect of the Awards for All grants. So this is the smaller of the open funding programmes. It's on a rolling basis, so there's no deadline for it. Currently, you can apply for £10,000, up to £10,000, and that has to be spent over 1 year. But from this autumn, we're changing that, and you can apply for up to £20,000 over a period of 2 years. So that's £20,000 a year for 2 years, and that will take effect in autumn. And that's the biggest change that we've seen in the lottery for a generation, and that's really come about from the feedback from those grassroots organisations that I was talking about earlier, that they need longer and they need a bit more money. So we've upped the size of available grant to £20,000 a year. This change will, so if you keep an eye on our funding pages, this change has been flagged up already on the website, but it will be reflected in the funding page from autumn. In the meantime, the current Awards for All is still open, so you can still apply for a grant of up to £10,000 over a period of 1 year. You don't have to wait to apply anymore. You don't have to wait for the new funding criteria to take effect. You can carry on if you've got something in the pipeline now. Okay. So as I implied before, we do take an equity-based approach, and what that means is we look at certainly each proposal on its merits, but we look at how it fits within the community, and we invest in those with greatest need. So that's what we're looking at when we assess grants. I'm talking here about both Awards for All and Reaching Communities, which is currently £10,000 and over, but that limit will change once the change for Awards for All comes in. So in all of those projects, all of those proposals, we want to invest most in those places and those projects that are trying to alleviate poverty, disadvantage and discrimination. And we're looking at supporting those communities in those areas which most need it. And we use our local knowledge, we use evidence, we use research, and we use what the people who are telling us, who are putting the grants in, we use what you tell us as well when we make those decisions. So we're really looking for those 4 missions I talked about earlier. We're really looking for projects that are going to bring about change in those areas and going to bring about the greatest impact in alleviating poverty, disadvantage and discrimination. But going back again, but bearing in mind again the 4 missions, so the children and young people, environmental issues. Glad I don't get tested on this. I have to remember them all the time. I'm sure we'll come across them again on the next slide. Whoops. So our funding in England is, at the moment, as I say, we're looking at the Awards for All programme and the Reaching Communities programme. And what we're doing is keeping things the same as they are at the moment until the autumn. And we know that we've got 3 main funding priorities in England currently, which are that we are supporting those stronger relationships that bring people together. So any project, any proposal that brings together a community. And by community, we mean that can be a group of people with a shared experience or a shared need, but it can also be bringing people together across a geographical community, so across a borough or across a couple of wards within a borough, or within a ward, a project that, for example, brought together the whole community in that ward. So community is quite an open definition that we have. We're also looking, both for Awards for All and Reaching Communities, we're looking at projects that change the places and the spaces that are used by the community. So community hubs, community centres, parks, or an online support network. Those are all the kinds of things that we mean by places and spaces. It doesn't have to be a physical space. It can be a virtual space, as I say, but anything that's really improving those meeting points that matter to the local community, we're open to those projects as well. And then our other sort of main strand, if you like, our underpinning strand is early intervention. So any activity that really addresses problems at the earliest possible stage. So I think it was it Lillian who talked about the work of Just Be and how you have those diversionary activities, if you like, that prevent young people from getting into trouble. So those are the kinds of things that we mean by addressing those problems at the earliest stage. Okay. And currently, at the moment, with the cost of living challenge, we are adapting our current funding to support those communities who are most adversely, as it says there, most adversely impacted by the cost of living crisis. So where there's a need in any community, it's obviously going to be made much worse by the cost of living and the rise in inflation. So we're looking at things like food poverty, rent, and the organisations themselves are also obviously struggling due to accommodation costs, supporting their staff with a reasonable salary, which will enable them to meet the cost of living crisis. And we've brought in additional funding to meet that cost of living challenge, if you like, and that applies to both again, Awards for All and Reaching Communities. So we've been funding a lot of projects that support people and organisations who are most heavily impacted by the cost of living crisis. So if you have or if you are successful in the next year in getting a Reaching Communities grant, for example, then we are actively considering and have given requests for uplifts in the grant, so we can give people more money, increase the grant to take into account additional expenses, or we can move funds sometimes between years or between budget lines. So we're taking a very flexible approach, if you like, to recognising that it's very often the organisations themselves that supporting those communities that really need the help to continue being able to support them. So if you are successful in a Reaching Communities grant within the next few months, then that is something that hopefully will help your concerns about the future. Okay. So what we're going to have a look now is at the National Lottery Awards for All and the Reaching Communities programme. So these are the same programmes that operated before our short-term COVID emergency funds, with just a few small changes. They're all on our website. I can send a separate link so that Steve can distribute them later. But all applications go through the website for both Awards for All and Reaching Communities. As I say, you don't have to wait for the new funding limit to come in for Awards for All. If you've got a project in mind at the moment that's coming in at under 10,000, then you can apply as usual. And if it's over 20,000, sorry, if it's over 10,000, then you can apply as usual to Reaching Communities. So, oh, here we go. We've also got a new program coming in. So this is the Million Hours Fund. Now the link for this is not on our website. It's something that's being publicised through the government portal, so I will definitely send you this link. And it's for projects that support young people aged between 11 and 18, or over 20, or up to 25 if they have particular needs, if they have a disability or special educational needs. And it's for projects that are supporting them in the first phase during these school summer holidays. So it has been a bit of a soft launch on this one. I think it was launched at the beginning of July. It's one of those that if you were already working in this area, you would have been aware of. As I say, it's not promoted openly on our website. And basically it's for programs that will support youth services to engage with young people at risk of antisocial behaviour. So very much like, again, what Lillian was talking about, that the work that JSB do. And it'd be interesting to hear at the end whether or not Lillian is aware of this funding. So although it's looking at the 2023 school summer holidays, there will be a second phase coming in, and we're not entirely sure at the moment just how what the duration of the project is, but there certainly will be a second phase coming in. And this one has a stricter eligibility criterion in comparison to the other, in comparison to Awards for All and Reaching Communities. And this one, to be eligible, the project must be taking place in specific wards in England, and the list of wards is on the government website that I will be sending you the link to. Those wards have been determined by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport by allocating wards to each police force area based on youth population, and then they've selected those with the highest number of antisocial behaviour incidents. So that's how they're targeting that particular funding. Okay. So Reaching Communities and Partnership Grants Programme, that's the one that I'm the regional officer for, or the local officer for, I should say. And so the rest of this is the one I know most about, so hopefully I can answer any questions relating to Awards for All, but because I know most about this one, the rest of the presentation is focused on this one. And at the moment, as I say, the changes are coming in autumn, but at the moment our grant programme runs from anything over £10,000. You can apply at any time, like Awards for All. It's an open rolling programme, there's no deadline. And again, you're applying online. I should say that if there's any reason that you can't apply online, that's absolutely fine. If you go online, you can submit a video online or a link to a video if that's suitable for you. But if you want to apply for either grant on paper, then there is also, need to go online first, or you can ring up the helpline, but there's also a link that will take you through to a paper application, or to request a paper form so that you can apply on paper if you like. The reason it's online is it just makes the whole thing easier to manage from our end, because all of the information is extracted from your online form and put into our grant management system, so we can find you really easily. So the Reaching Communities grants programme, we'll fund anything, say, over £10,000, anything running up to 5 years. We will fund, unlike many other funders, we will fund direct costs, so core costs, I should say, so salaries, rent, venue, accommodation, utilities, that kind of thing. We'll provide costs for organisational development. So if you're at a certain stage in your organisation's journey, and you feel that you need to build in some training or capacity for those people in the lead, then we will fund that as well as the project related costs, so the direct costs of delivering your activities, and capital costs. So we've had a couple of capital costs in the last year. We built a new community hub in Croydon, and we've given money for a youth bus in Bromley. So those are the kind of things that we mean by capital costs. Okay. So once this is a little timeline of how it goes, really. So if you visit the website, then it will tell you about eligibility, and you can apply online. If you choose to apply online, you'll get an acknowledgement, an automatic acknowledgement. And at this point, your application for Reaching Communities is passed to the local team. So if you're based in Bromley or Croydon, it would come to me. If your application is for Awards for All, it's dealt with in Birmingham, actually. So it's dealt with centrally, and there is you don't have a named officer, if you like. So for Reaching Communities, you'll have a local named officer, which is me. Your proposal comes to me, and it's reviewed in the first instance by me, and then it's taken to a local panel, so a London-based panel across all of the areas around London. And if it's something that doesn't meet our needs at the time, or our investment criteria at the time, then we'll let you know at that stage. And we try to give you that feedback, that first feedback, within 3 months. It's not always easy, but we do try. If we do like your proposal at that stage, then we'll take you to the next application stage. We'll invite you to submit a full proposal, and we'll send you a list of questions asking for more detail about the proposal, about the organisation. And at that point, that's what we call stage 2, or the invitation to apply. And that conversation can take, it can take as long as it takes. So it's really up to you at that stage to work at your own pace to submit further information. Very often I'll have a chat with the applicant at that point. Very often I'll ring them up if I haven't really understood the application and ask for more details. And the length of time that stage 2 takes is really driven by the applicant, bearing in mind that the funding officer has anything up to 50 applications to deal with, applications and grants, I should say. So if the quicker you are, the quicker it'll happen, basically. So all the information is in, and then your proposal goes to a decision-making panel. And that decision-making panel is made up of people from outside of London, so across the region. So at the first stage, it's a London-based panel. At the second stage, it's from the region, which will include some London-based people as well. So then you're waiting for a decision, and I should say that the decision panel sits fortnightly. So if you fall in the middle of those panels, then you'll obviously have a little bit of a longer wait. So who can apply? So these criteria are relevant to both awards for all and reaching communities. You can apply if you're a registered charity. You don't have to be a registered charity. You can be a community group organisation, but you must have a constitution. You can be a community interest company or not for profit. And you can also, which is something that surprises people sometimes, you can also be a statutory body, such as the local authority. So Bromley Council or any council could apply for something which is in addition to what they are statutorily obliged to provide. We can't accept applications from individuals or sole traders. So any company that's making a profit, it isn't eligible. If you're based outside the UK, I'm afraid you're not eligible. And there's also quite a few criteria around the trustees or the directors, so that they need to be two separate individuals, not related and not living at the same address. And we can't accept applications from one organisation applying on behalf of another. I talked briefly about partnership applications. You can come in with another organisation to apply as a partnership if, for example, one of you is going to take the training aspect of a project and the other is going to take the delivery aspect. So you're equal partners, but with responsibilities for different aspects of the same project. But what we're really looking for at the moment is applications from groups who we haven't reached previously, or certainly not funded a great deal previously, from groups that support communities who traditionally have poorer outcomes, or have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. If you are an unincorporated group, which very often smaller organisations are, then we do suggest that you explore becoming an incorporated organisation, and there's a lot of information on our website about that and the reasons why you might consider doing that. The form has changed a little bit, so if you've applied before, you'll notice that there are a couple of new questions. So the online form, as well as all of these things, it also asks you information about the number of staff and volunteers you have, and specifically about their lived experience of the community that you're hoping to benefit, as well as all of those other things, which I don't think any of those have changed. So as I said, we'll ask you for more detail if we like the idea of your application. You'll tell us about your proposal in your own way, at your own pace, and then again we'll aim to let you know that second stage decision within 12 weeks. One of the things that organisations often forget or leave out at that second stage is that we do ask them for information about their safeguarding practices and policies. And we understand that organisations have different ways of working around vulnerable children and adults, and also around COVID-19 as well. So if you've got policies around coronavirus, then that we would expect to see those. So although this is sent out, this request for safeguarding is sent out at stage 2. If you get through to stage 2, often perhaps it's buried in a lot of other information, but often it is ignored, and it can hold things up if the funding officer then has to go back and request it again. So if you are putting in an application for reaching communities and you are successful and go through to stage 2, do remember to put in your safeguarding and your CV19 policies and practice. Okay. If you're successful, you'll get an offer letter, and you'll have sent us your bank statement, which has to meet certain criteria. You need to start spending your grant inside 6 months, and then we'll keep an eye on you throughout the duration of your grant We'll be asking you how you have or are involving the people from the community who are benefiting from your grant. We'll be asking you about the difference the funding's made, what you're learning, how the money's going, how you're spending it. And that sort of grant monitoring, if you like, might consist also of visits, in-person visits to grant holders and meeting some of the beneficiaries of the grant. So we don't just let you loose. We keep an eye on you. Some of grant holders ask for more frequent monitoring, so maybe 3 months, but our default is just once a year. But we can do more frequently if that's what you would like. And really, that's the end of everything I have to tell you about reaching communities and a little bit about Awards for All. I will stop sharing, so hopefully you can see my face now. Don't know if you could see it before. And yeah, any questions at all?
Did you mention, Tricia, thanks very much for that presentation. I saw the word "and partnerships." Is that the actual formal partnerships pot as well, or is that partnership arrangements with communities?
Yes, the latter. It was historically, there was a separate grant program called a partnerships grant, but it's now merged, so that if you come in with another organisation, you come into reaching communities, there's a box on the system that we tick, and we list both organisations as partners on that grant.
Right, so no longer a separate strand of partnership. It's actually comes under the umbrella of reaching communities.
Exactly. Yeah.
Useful. Thank you.
Tricia, one of the questions I was going to ask, I don't know whether anyone else it's come across their minds, is that with the change coming, is there a calculation for organisations to make? For example, if they want £14,000, is to wait, because that would be an Awards for All award rather than a reaching communities. And Awards for All is a shorter application process. And is there a calculation to make that actually, if we wait, we can go for the same amount of money, but through a simpler process than doing it now, having to go through reaching communities, if that makes sense? Yeah. Does that make it?
Yes, and yes, there is, and that's up to organisations to make that call, really. And it would be, although you can, once the change is in place, though you can come in for something for 2 years, it doesn't have to be 2 years. So it might be that you really need a bit more money, but you only want to, your project really is only running for a year or 18 months. So it might be that influences your decision. It's really, yes, it is a call to make, and it's really entirely up to you, and thinking about the needs of the project, what you're trying to achieve, and also, again, it is a very competitive process, so it's about balancing up, what we've said about wanting to fund more organisations that we haven't previously funded, but also about the needs in the area. It's a big balancing act at the moment. At the end of the day, you have to go for what the organisation has to go for, what best suits their needs. But yes, that is a consideration.
I did have another couple of questions. I'm so sorry to.
No, carry on.
With the Awards for All, the new Awards for All. So my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it that it's up to £10,000 per year over 2 years? So
no, it's up to 20,000. So across the 2 years, it would be a total of up to 40,000.
Oh, okay.
Across the 2 years. Otherwise, it would be the same as it is now, basically, because at the moment it's 10,000 a year, and if you went for 2 years, it would be still 10,000 a year. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, okay, I understand, because I suppose with Awards for All, you can apply as often, if within reason, as you like. Is that right?
Yes, okay. That's right. Yes, and each application is taken for both grant programs is taken on its merits. You can apply. There's no deadline. You can apply when you want. You can apply as many times as you want, and there's no time restriction. If you are unsuccessful, you can come back the next week if you want. So there's no restriction in that sense.
And just one last thing here as well. I think certain organisations that I know have actually put in an application for Awards for All, and it's been taking quite a long time to get a response. Is that them, or is that
it's
administrative?
in Awards for All, it's a very and as I say, I don't work on that programme, but my understanding is that it's a simpler process, so it will be just down to the volume of applications, because there are criteria that each application has to meet, and the form is simpler to complete, and it's simpler to assess those applications, and the bulk of our applications are for Awards for All. So the workload is much greater, and Awards for All will also be running the Million Hours, Million Youth Work Hours program as well. So it's just down to the sheer volume of applications.
Okay, so it might just be that. Okay, thank you.
I think we did look at the Million Hours. I think there were maybe 3 wards in Bromley. I think it might be 3 areas in Bromley. I think it's Bromley Town, and one or 2 others. I think it might be Penge and around there. So I think there is some scope there. I think we have posted it on our website. So I think that's really useful. I wonder, Tricia, if you can say something. I know in the past Bromley's been seen as a cold spot. So I think, you know, when people look at Bromley as an average, you know, it's seen as, you know, the leafy green, quite affluent borough, and therefore it kind of misses out in particular areas. I mean, I think we no longer have a London Sport dedicated person for Bromley.
Right.
We lost that last year because Bromley wasn't seen as a priority area for them when they had a reshuffle. So I think, how do people? There is an issue there, isn't there? How do people get past that perception? I guess it's digging down, getting the sort of local data.
Yeah,
really makes the strong case that support is needed.
Really good question, and I think it is an issue for a lot of groups, definitely, to really make the case that there is perhaps pockets of deprivation across the borough, and how does that come across to funders? How do we make the case, especially with so much competition, as you've sort of said, so much volume?
I mean, and that's where the lottery really benefits from having a patch officer, you know, a local officer for each patch. So I have the boroughs of Bromley and Croydon. I live in Bromley, so I know the areas both through my work, but I know through living here. And we do look at, you know, Bromley is the biggest borough, it's the greenest borough, but there are, as you said, and you mentioned a couple of those wards, areas of great deprivation, and we do, you know, we bring a lot of research and data into our decisions, and we look at specific needs in specific areas. So we do weigh that up with an application that comes in. It never does any harm in an application to point us in the direction of some research that we may have missed. We're, you know, happy to do that as well. But we do take in information that's readily available out there, as well as our own local knowledge. And I think that's and obviously, because we have visits with grant holders or potential grant holders, we go out and we talk to people, and we hear it from the horse's mouth as well, if you like. And I think that is the difference between the National Lottery way of doing things and other big funders who don't have that local or that relational aspect to their funding.
And did you say we can also still apply for reaching communities via video? Is that still an option?
Yes, I've had a video application in last year in Croydon. That at the second stage we needed to have a written application, but that, because the first application was successful, and they did apply, they did fill in the online form, but they basically said, see this link to this video. So that's the way that goes, really. And if you're successful, then there is a bit more paperwork and form and filling in at stage 2. But that's because you come to that stage. That's where the funding officer steps in and helps you with that.
Excellent.
I've never seen, sorry, I'm really hogging this. I apologize, everybody. I've never actually seen any criteria around what the video might look like and what makes a good video. There's lots around what makes good narrative, but there isn't much around what makes good video. And the reason why I think that's important is some communities are oral communities and they're less likely to be academically writing. Do you know what I mean? I think it's,
yeah.
You talked about equity, and I think if that really is the case, then this is probably more feedback, but something worth giving more guidance as to what a good video might look like, as it were.
Yeah, no, I think that's good feedback. And I mean, at the moment, I would say if you're thinking of doing a video, then look at, it's ironic, but look at the form and cover the things that are in the form.
Yes.
But yeah. Is that Nikki with you? With your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to really iterate about the data. I mean, for example, and the perception of Bromley Borough. I mean, we do have the largest population of people living with dementia than any other London borough. So it's a really significant issue here in Bromley. And we also, I recently learned we have the largest number of veterans and their families than any other London borough. So we do have extra challenges. That was new to me too. There's a new project which is linking up here in Bromley. So I'm quite excited by that.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. No, I didn't know that. Yeah, well, we're always, you know, the other thing I'd say is that it would reiterate is that, you know, it is a very competitive pipeline, and so we, you know, we're looking at all the needs across the community, all those different needs. But yeah, we are always happy to be pointed in the direction of local knowledge and local research and data.
Okay. Does anyone have any further questions or observations they'd like to make?
I just wanted to ask about the Awards for All. We have lots of different campaigns running, which all cost quite a lot of money. We've got our beds, a school uniform, healthy homes, we do kitchen appliances. Is there sort of, I know you said you can apply sort of as much as you like, but is it sort of frowned upon to be asking for money for every single campaign?
For Awards for All, that will come through to a central place, and it might be dealt with by a different officer each time, rather than reaching communities, all of which come for me if they're in Bromley. So that officer, that funding officer, will be looking at the criteria in quite a black and white way, if you like. So the number of, you know, if you've had a few, we do have some organisations that have had 5 or 6 Awards for All grants, then moved on to reaching communities. It's not really, there's no limit to the number of times you can apply. You can only apply for, so you can apply for something simultaneously if it's for 2 different things. We can't do double funding. So, and that applies between Awards for All and reaching communities. So if you're applying for both, you can, but it has to be for 2 separate things. There's no real limit, but I haven't seen any organisations, for example, that have had more than 10. But yeah, there's no real limit. And if it was a reaching communities grant, then and we were and you were coming in for, I don't know, your 10th grant, then we might be having a conversation.
Yeah.
But if it's Awards for All, as I say, it doesn't go to anyone with local knowledge, and it might go to a different officer each time.
So if we do really need it, then we can try.
Absolutely, yeah. Do apply. I wouldn't dissuade anybody from applying.
Okay. Any more last questions? Can't see any. Tricia, thank you very much for that. Is it a matter of, do you have any inkling of when the change will come? Was it still talked of as August? Sorry, autumn.
Yeah, so it's still autumn. We've been, I think October's been bandied about, but we're still, it's just autumn at the moment. But that change will be flagged up on the website.
Okay, so we'll be looking out for that, and as soon as we know, then obviously we'll be posting all the information on our weekly bulletin and on the website and other various places. So keep a lookout for that. Obviously, if you need the money, get the applications in. Tricia is, as you say, is the local officer, so she's, if you are looking to put together applications, especially for reaching communities, then come through us, and I'm sure Tricia will be happy to have a discussion once you've got an idea planted.
And that's what this afternoon is about, so that
we have got a few surgeries this afternoon. I think we've got a couple of slots left. If anyone's got any ideas they want to discuss, so snap those up quickly if they're still available. Other than that, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Tricia, for taking the time to talk us through the strategy. Really interesting. I think it's a great development that there has been a realization. I think the National Lottery has obviously listened to groups that say sometimes the money isn't enough, and just a year it's not enough for them to get moving and get growing. So I think having more money over a longer period of time is exactly what a lot of groups want, so they can get the thing on a sustainable long-term footing. So I think that's great to hear that. But if there are no more comments or questions, as I say, thank you very much for coming along this morning and for asking all your questions and listening so attentively. Hopefully it was useful. So we have got the recording. So what we will do, I'll send it out once I've edited it a little bit, and then we'll put it up on our website as well as an aid memoir for people who want to find out a little bit more about the new strategy and how it's going to impact on the funding going forward.
And I'll send you the link for the 1,000,000 hours as well, as that can be difficult to find.
Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Very much, Tricia. Thank you, Steve, and everyone. Bye bye now.
Okay. Bye bye.